The conference room overlooked the glittering skyline under a bright, blue afternoon sky, where success was measured in billion-dollar decisions and expensive smiles. No one noticed the exhausted janitor quietly, pushing his cleaning cart through the hallway until he suddenly abandoned it, burst through the open doors, and shouted a desperate warning that froze every heartbeat inside the room. A white porcelain coffee cup hovered inches from the CEO's lips. Time seemed to stop. Executives stared in disbelief. Security guards rushed forward. And across the polished oak table, the CEO's charming fiancé suddenly turned ghostly pale. In that terrifying moment, the poorest man in the building risked everything to save the richest woman in the room, never imagining that his courage would uncover a secret powerful enough to destroy an empire. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, honesty, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who believes in hope, and subscribe to Soulful Tales 2 for more emotional stories that stay with your heart long after they end. The janitor's name was Gideon Mercer, a 38-year-old, widowed father whose life had become a daily battle after losing his wife, Marin, to a sudden illness 4 years earlier. Every sunrise began before dawn. He packed lunch for his 8-year-old daughter. Iris braided her dark hair the best he could, walked her to the neighborhood school, and then worked 2 janitorial shifts just to keep their tiny apartment. His work clothes were always stained from hours of scrubbing floors, yet his eyes carried a quiet dignity that hardship had never managed to erase. He believed that a person's worth was measured not by the suit they wore, but by the choices they made when nobody was watching. The company where Gideon worked, Valecroft Dynamics, occupied one of the tallest towers in the city. Employees rarely noticed him except when a trash bin overflowed or a coffee stain appeared on the carpet. Some executives barely looked in his direction, but Gideon never complained. He simply smiled politely and continued, working because he wanted his daughter to see that honest work was something to be proud of. At the top of the company stood Serafina Hale, one of the youngest CEOs in the country's technology industry. Newspapers praised her intelligence. Business magazines admired her leadership, and investors trusted her vision. Yet behind the headlines was a woman carrying invisible loneliness. Her parents had died years earlier, leaving her to inherit not only enormous wealth, but also endless responsibility. She had recently announced her engagement to Damian Cross, an elegant financial consultant admired for his confidence and charm. Their wedding had become the favorite topic of business reporters who called them the city's perfect power couple. Only appearances can be dangerously convincing. Weeks before that unforgettable afternoon, Gideon had accidentally overheard something while cleaning outside an executive lounge. He wasn't trying to listen. He had simply paused to replace a trash bag when 2 voices drifted through the slightly open door. One belonged unmistakably to Damian. The other belonged to a board member named Vektor Ashcombe. Their conversation was hushed, tense, and filled with strange references to insurance policies, ownership transfers, and a celebration that would happen sooner than expected. Gideon dismissed it as complicated business talk until one sentence sent chills through him. Damian calmly remarked that after one unfortunate incident, everything would belong to him. The words haunted Gideon for days. He tried convincing himself that he had misunderstood. After all, powerful executives often discussed complicated legal matters. Still, every time he saw Damian smiling beside Serafina, something deep inside whispered that the smile was hiding darkness. Then came the annual shareholders meeting. The building buzzed with excitement from early morning. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Reporters waited outside. Caterers carried trays of expensive food through bright hallways, while executives rehearsed speeches that would influence billions of dollars. Gideon quietly polished windows, emptied trash bins, and stayed invisible, exactly as everyone expected. Just before the meeting began, Gideon entered the executive dining area to collect used cups. He noticed Damian standing near the refreshment table with no one around. The fiancé glanced nervously over both shoulders before slipping a tiny packet from his jacket. Gideon instinctively ducked behind a decorative pillar. Within seconds, Damian emptied the contents into a single coffee cup, stirred it carefully, and placed it back on the silver. serving tray before walking away as if nothing had happened. Gideon's heart pounded so violently he thought it might burst. His first instinct was disbelief. Maybe it was medicine, maybe sweetener, maybe vitamins. Yet Damien's anxious behavior and that earlier conversation suddenly fit together like pieces of a terrifying puzzle. Before Gideon could react, a catering employee picked up the tray and carried it toward the boardroom. Everything happened in seconds. Without thinking about consequences, Gideon sprinted after the tray. Cleaning supplies scattered across the marble floor behind him as confused employees shouted. He burst through the conference room doors just as Serafina lifted the white cup toward her lips. His desperate warning echoed across the silent room. Every face turned toward him. Security officers grabbed Gideon's arms immediately, assuming the exhausted janitor had lost his mind. Executives glared with outrage over the interruption, but Serafina didn't drink. She noticed something in Gideon's terrified eyes that couldn't be faked. She calmly ordered everyone to stop. The room remained frozen. When Gideon explained what he had witnessed, disbelief spread across the executives. Damien laughed confidently, dismissing the accusation as the imagination of an overworked janitor seeking attention. His voice sounded smooth, logical, even sympathetic. Several board members nodded in agreement. Then Serafina quietly requested laboratory testing on the untouched coffee. No one objected. An hour later, the laboratory results arrived. The coffee contained a rare, nearly undetectable poison capable of causing symptoms, resembling a sudden heart attack. Silence swept through the building. Damien's face lost every trace of confidence. Security officers who had restrained Gideon moments earlier now surrounded the fiancé instead. Investigators soon uncovered hidden financial accounts, forged legal documents, and enormous life insurance policies that would have transferred control of Serafina's fortune directly to Damien after her death. Even more shocking was the discovery that Vektor had secretly helped arrange everything in exchange for a share of the company. Within days, both men were arrested. News channels celebrated Serafina's miraculous survival, but very few headlines focused on the janitor, whose courage had prevented a tragedy. Gideon returned to work expecting life to continue as usual. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Serafina asked to meet him privately. She didn't arrive surrounded by lawyers or assistants. She came alone, carrying 2 simple cups of coffee purchased from a nearby cafe. This time she smiled before taking the first sip herself, quietly thanking the man who had saved her life. As they talked, Gideon shared his story for the first time. He spoke about Marin's illness, the hospital bills that erased every saving they had, the lonely nights comforting little Iris after nightmares, and the promise he made at his wife's bedside to raise their daughter, with honesty even if life remained unfair. Serafina listened without interruption. She realized the man everyone ignored possessed more integrity than many, executives earning millions. Over the following months, surprising changes spread throughout Valecroft Dynamics. Serafina introduced scholarship programs for employees' children, expanded healthcare benefits for support staff, increased wages for maintenance workers, and created leadership meetings where janitors, receptionists, and security guards could share suggestions directly with management. She repeatedly reminded every executive that greatness began with respecting every human being inside the building. Many wondered what had inspired such dramatic reforms. Only Gideon and Serafina knew the full answer. One rainy afternoon, Iris visited the office after school. Nervous and clutching her worn backpack, she expected another boring afternoon waiting for her father to finish cleaning. Instead, Serafina personally greeted the little girl, showed her the rooftop garden, and asked about her dreams. Iris shyly admitted she wanted to become a doctor because doctors had tried so hard to save her mother. The words lingered in Serafina's heart. Weeks later, she established a fully funded educational trust for Iris, ensuring that financial hardship would never stand between the little girl and her dream. When Gideon learned what she had done, emotion overwhelmed him. For years, he had believed his greatest gift to his daughter would simply be surviving, long enough to watch her grow. Now someone else's kindness had given Iris a future brighter than he had ever dared imagine. The story spread quietly throughout the company. Employees stopped rushing past cleaning staff without saying hello. Executives began learning the names of security guards. Receptionists received genuine appreciation. The invisible people finally became visible, because one brave janitor had chosen courage over fear. Years later, when Iris graduated at the top of her medical school class, Serafina sat proudly beside Gideon during the ceremony. As Iris accepted her diploma, she looked toward the audience with tears shining in her eyes. She knew that every achievement standing before her had begun with one impossible decision, made inside a conference room years earlier. A father with empty pockets had possessed a heart richer than anyone else in the building. His courage hadn't only saved a CEO, it had restored faith in humanity for countless lives. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Soulful Tales too. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world that kindness is never wasted. Special request, before this story ends, comment below with one act of kindness can change a life. We'd love to know you're part of this community of hope. As the sun slowly set beyond the city skyline that unforgettable day, Gideon walked home holding Iris's small hand, wearing the same worn work boots and carrying the same old lunch bag. He was still a janitor. He was still a single father, but something inside him had changed forever. He finally understood that true greatness never depends on wealth, titles, or applause. It lives in ordinary people who choose to do the right thing when everyone else stays silent. And somewhere above the glowing city lights, it felt as though Maren was smiling, proud that the man she had loved kept his promise, not only by raising their daughter with honor, but by proving that one courageous heart can save far more than a single life.